In this video, you're going to see me working through the sample test for Chapter 5, including the multiple choice answers that we went over in class the other day. So for number 1, you're asked to find the slope of the line. Remember, you're looking at the rise over the run, so we're simply counting. You can start at any dot you want, and I'll just start here. If I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, 2, 3, so it's 4/3, and it's in the negative direction, so the answer is A. Number 2, we're finding the slope of the line that passes through those 2 points. So we're using the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's -1 minus 8 over 9 minus 4. That's -9 over 5. Doesn't reduce, so the answer to number 2 is D. On number 3, you're just looking at that horizontal line and determining whether or not the slope is 0 or undefined. And on a horizontal line, that's slope 0, so the answer for 3 is A. If it's undefined, it's going to be a vertical line straight up and down. Number 4 just wants you to identify the slope and the y-intercept of that line. Remember, when an equation is in y equals mx plus b form, that the m is the slope and the b is the y-intercept. So we're looking at a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of 10. So for number 4, the answer is C. Number 5, same question. Find the slope and the y-intercept, but this time the equation is not in slope-intercept form. So we need to get it in slope-intercept form so that we can pick out those 2 pieces of information. So we're going to move the 18x to the other side by subtracting it. So that gives us 10y equals -18x minus 120. Remember, I like to write that x term first. Now we need to divide everything by 10. And that gives us y equals -9/5 x minus 12. So now you're looking for an answer that has a slope of -9/5 and a y-intercept of -12, and that is letter B. Number 6, you're just simply writing the equation, and if you look at the answers, they're all given to you in slope-intercept form, so you're just plugging in a 2 for the m, and you're plugging in a 9 for the y-intercept or the b, so you should have y equals 2x plus 9, which is answer B. Number 7 is asking you to write the equation of the line that's in slope-intercept, the equation of the line that's graphed in slope-intercept form. So you have to have 2 things. You have to have the slope, and you have to have the y-intercept. So we look at the graph and we see that it crosses the y-axis at -1. So that's -1 at the back. And we simply count. If you find 2 ordered pairs or 2 places where the line, you know that the line goes through, and that's -1, and it also looks like it goes through here at 4. So that's up 1 and over 4. So the slope is 1/4. So the -1 or the -1 in the equation comes from where the graph crosses the y-axis, and the 1/4 comes from counting the slope. So on number 7, the answer is D. Number 8 asks to pick out the graph that has the equation y equals -2/5 x plus 4 correctly graphed. You'll see you can quickly rule out letter B because it does not go through +4 on the y-axis, and you can also quickly rule out letter D because it does not have negative slope. Now it has positive slope, So now it's either A or C. They both go through positive 4 on the y-axis. So you have to see which line has negative 2/5 slope. So if we look at, looks like it goes through there and maybe here. And if I pick a couple points where this line goes through, it looks like it goes through there, here, here. Okay, so if I look at line C, I'm going up 2 over 5, down 2 over 5. So you can see that this letter C is correctly graphed, that equation. Oops. Number 9, the X and Y-intercepts. Remember, X and Y-intercepts are found by making the X or the Y 0. So if we're going to find the X-intercept, we make the Y 0. So we get 2x equals negative 18, or x equals negative 9. To find the Y-intercept, you make x 0. So you have 3y equals negative 18, or y equals negative 6. And so now it's between B or D. Remember that when the x-intercept is negative 9, we found that by making the y 0, and you find the y-intercept by making the x 0. So the answer for number 9 is D. We did talk briefly about how to write your intercepts as ordered pairs. So hopefully you remembered that. Number 10 again wants us to match an equation with a graph, and I don't want you to overthink this one. You can rearrange the equation if you want, figure out what the slope is, figure out what the y-intercept is, or you can just look at that, understand that it's in standard form, and just find both of your intercepts. So the x-intercept, which again is found by making y 0, would be 5x equals negative 15, so x would equal negative 3. And the y-intercept is found again by making x 0, so you have negative 3y equals negative 15. Divide both sides by negative 3 and you get y equals 5. So you're looking for the graph that has an x-intercept of negative 3 and a y-intercept of positive 5. So that's letter A. Number 11 is asking you to write the equation in standard form. So we need to subtract the 1/3 x term to the other side. So that gives us negative 1/3 x plus y equals 2. We can't have fractions, so I need to multiply by 3. And my x term can't be negative, so I'm going to multiply by negative 3. So that's going to cancel with the 1/3 and cancel the negative and give me x minus 3y equals negative 6. So for number 11, you get answer B. 12 is asking you to write it in point slope form for the line that goes through 4, negative 6 and has a slope of 3/5. So if it goes through 4, negative 6, this is the x1 and this is the y1. And because it's a negative 6 in our equation, it will look like y plus 6. So that's letter C. And letter A is not correct because it doesn't have the parentheses around the x minus 4. (13) is asking for a line that's parallel to y equals negative 5x plus 3 and passes through negative 6, 3. So remember, when lines are parallel, they have the same slope. So we're going to use that negative 5 as the slope, and it passes through negative 6, 3. Now, normally this would just be plugging in for point-slope form, but notice that all of the answers here are in slope-intercept form. So if we start in point-slope form, we have y minus 3 equals negative 5 times x plus 6. So the negative 5 is going in for the slope. They're parallel, so they have the same slope. The negative 6 is going in for x1, and the 3 is going in for y1. But now I need to rearrange the equation so that I can see which answer choice to select. So by distributing negative 5x minus 30, now we're going to add 3 to both sides. And sometimes you can just look over at the answer choices. You see you're going to get a negative 27 here, so that's letter B. On 14, we're checking to see if two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we have to compare their slopes. In order to compare their slopes, whoops, I went too far. In order to compare their slopes, you need to have both lines in y equals mx plus b. So for line 1, I'm going to subtract 7x and get negative 4y equals negative 7x plus 4. Divide everything by negative 4. And really my focus is here. So my slope for line 1 is a positive 7/4. Excuse me. If we go over to line 2, subtract x from both sides, we have negative 4y equals negative x plus 3. Divide everything by negative 4. And again, we're just focusing here, so there's really no sense to solve the whole problem out. That gives us a positive 1/4 for the slope. So if you compare 1/4 and 7/4, they're not the same and they're not opposite. So the answer would be C, neither. 15 wants to write an equation of a line that's perpendicular to that line that you're given, negative x plus 2y equals negative 12, and it passes through 6, negative 2. So first we have to figure out what the slope of this line is. We find that by putting it in y equals mx plus b form. So that's 2y equals x minus 12. Divide everything by 2, and we get y equals 1/2 x minus 6. Now, we need to write an equation that's perpendicular to that line. Well, the slope is 1/2. So our new slope is going to be negative 2. Now notice I also want it to pass through that point, but if you look through your answers, only one of those lines has a slope of negative 2. And so that's letter C. You actually don't have to go through the work of plugging it into point-slope form and then writing it in slope-intercept form, because if you look at the answers, there's only one equation there that has the correct slope. So make sure on multiple choice that you're not doing more work than you need to. Okay, so that takes care of the multiple choice portion of the test. So let's go down to where we have the short answers. Starting on number 16, you're supposed to find the slope. For 16 and 17, this would be using the slope formula. So we have 5 minus 2 over 3 minus 7. That's 3 over negative 4, or negative 3/4. For 17, we have negative 4 minus 5 over 3 minus a negative 2. So you're adding the opposite. So it's negative 9 over 5, or negative 9/5. Starting on number 18, you're asked to graph the equations of the lines. So for number 18, you'll notice it's in slope-intercept form. So we start up at positive 3, and then we use the slope of negative 2 or negative 2 over 1 to go up 2 and over 1. Remember, on these I want at least 5 points plotted. You'll see me most of the time go all the way through the graph. So I'm going down 2 over 1 now. And you draw your line. Make sure you have arrows at the end. 19 is also in slope-intercept form, so we're going to start up at positive 2. And our slope is negative 4/5, so that's up 4 over 5, up 4 over 5. Same thing in the other direction, down 4 over 5, and down 4 over 5. Number 20 isn't quite in the right form yet. We want to subtract 2 from both sides to get y equals negative x minus 2, so that we're using the correct y-intercept, negative 2. Slope is negative, and it's just 1 over 1, so we're going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And again, making sure that it's in the negative direction. So there's number 20. #21 has y equals negative 4x. Notice that there's no y-intercept back here. That's the same as saying plus 0. So if we start at the origin, we're going up 4 and over 1. Remember, when your slope is a whole number, you can put it over 1, so that we rise the top number and you run the bottom number. #22 is a little bit different. I'm not sure that we've seen one like this before, but the equation is just simply x equals 5. There's no y. It's difficult to tell what the slope is since there is no y. We can't put it in y-intercept form, or excuse me, slope-intercept form. But what I want you to understand here is that when the equation says x equals 5, what that basically means is that it doesn't matter what your y is on the ordered pair, all of the x's are 5s. So what does that mean? It means you could have the ordered pair 5, 0. You could have the ordered pair 5, negative 8. You have the ordered pair 5, 7. You could have the ordered pair 5, negative 2, 5, negative 5, 5, 4, 5, 10. And you'll see what's kind of happening here. All of the x values for every ordered pair on the line are 5s. So that means that it's just a vertical line that goes through the x-axis at 5, and the slope here is actually undefined. So when you have a line that has slope undefined, it's a vertical line that goes through the x value at this number. And that's something you're just going to want to remember. On 23, we're going to add 3 to the other side. So we're going to start up at positive 3. Our slope is negative 2/3. So we're going up 2 over 3 in the negative direction again. And I promise on your test, oh, I only went over 2 there. Promise on your test I won't give you all negative slopes, as I think all of these were negative slope except 22. So then that's what the line looks like on 23. Okay, let's keep going. I know that this video is getting kind of long, and some of you probably, most of you didn't miss very many of these, so hopefully you're just kind of going over the ones that maybe you missed. So for 24, we're finding the x-intercept by covering up the y. So if you divide both sides by 7, you get an x-intercept of 3. And you find the y-intercept by kind of covering up the x, dividing everything by 3, and you get 7. So when we plot an x-intercept of 3 and a y-intercept of 7, remember you need two ordered pairs to graph a line. Same thing on number 25, just watch your signs here. So to find the x-intercept, we divide both sides by 2. That gives us an x-intercept of 2. And for a y-intercept, cover up the x and divide by -3, so you get -4/3, or you can think about it as being -1 1/3. And that's okay, we haven't dealt with fractions a lot, but you know, it's not really any different graphing wise. So we graph at +2 and we graph at -1 1/3. So you're in between -1 and -2, a little closer to -1. My dot doesn't want to stay on the screen. So there you go. So that is what 24 and 25 look like. Now we're getting into writing equations, standard form, slope-intercept form, point-slope form. We're going to start talking about parallel and perpendicular lines on this sample test. So for standard form, remember you need to get this x on the other side, so we're going to subtract 4x to the other side, and that gives us -4x plus y equals -11. Notice that that 11 is negative. I need to multiply everything by a -1 though, because I cannot have a negative x term. So that gives me 4x minus y equals +11. Changes the sign of everything. 27, we're going to subtract 2/3 x to the other side. So when you subtract 2/3 x to the other side, you get -2/3 x plus y equals -25/3. Again, we don't want a negative x term, but we also don't want fractions, so we're going to get rid of both at the same time by multiplying by a -3. So be careful with what happens here. The 3's cancel each other out, and you're kind of left with this 2 on top. But also because we're getting rid of the negative, it's a positive 2x. -3 times y is -3y. And it's going to equal, the 3's are going to cancel each other out again, and the negatives multiplied together are going to give you a positive 25. So 2x minus 3y equals 25. When you get down to 28, you are now writing the equation in standard form for the line through the given points or through the given point with the given slope. So on 28, we first have to find the slope, and that's found by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's 6/2, which reduces to 3. Now I'm going to put it in point-slope form first, and I'm going to use the first ordered pair. That gives me y minus 2 equals 3 times x minus 1. I'm going to distribute y minus 2 equals 3x minus 3. I'm going to add 2 to the other side to get it in slope-intercept form, 3x minus 1. But now I need to subtract the 3x, and I'm going to get -3x plus y equals -1, but I can't have a negative, so I need to multiply everything by -1 to give me a final answer of 3x minus y equals 1. So it's a lot of work here, finding the slope, putting it in point-slope form, rearranging to slope-intercept form, and then finally writing it in standard form. 29, it's a it's a little easier because we already have the slope. So we're just going to start off in point slope form. Y minus 7 equals 5 halves times x minus 2. So when we distribute, we get y minus 7 equals 5 halves x minus 5. 5 over 2 times 2, the 2's cancel out and you're just left with 5 there. So add 7 to both sides. We get y equals 5 halves x plus 2. I'm going to subtract the 5 halves x to the other side to get negative 5 halves x plus y equals 2. Now again, I can't have a negative and I can't have a fraction. So to get rid of the negative, I multiply by a negative. To get rid of the fraction, I multiply by a 2. So that is 5x minus 2y equals negative 4. And that's your final answer for number 29. Okay, on 30, make sure you're following the directions. We can stop at slope-intercept form here. So we're writing an equation for the line that's parallel to the given line. If it's parallel, remember that means that they have the same slope. So the line that we write for number 30 is also going to have a slope of 2. So we use the point 34 and we use the slope 2 to get y minus 4 equals 2 times x minus 3. When we distribute y minus 4, 2x minus 6, add 4 to both sides, and you get y equals 2x minus 2. Same thing on 31. The slope here is just 1. They're parallel, so we're going to use that same slope, and we get y plus 1 equals 1 times x minus 4. Remember, we're using this ordered pair, so when we distribute, you get 1x minus 4, and I typically will just write x. I won't even write the 1 in front, except for some reason it doesn't want to erase. So subtract 1 to the other side, and that gives you y equals x minus 5. Now we're writing in slope-intercept form the line that's perpendicular. So remember, when it's perpendicular, we're going to take the negative reciprocal of the slope. And you might want to just do that right away so that you don't forget. So we're using negative 1/3 and we're using negative 6. So it's y minus 4 equals negative 1/3 times x minus 6. When you distribute, that's negative 1/3 x plus 2. Be careful there. Make sure you understand where that plus 2 comes from. Add 4 to both sides. And for a final answer, you get y equals negative 1/3 x plus 6. On 33, you're going to have y plus 4 equals negative 6 times x plus 1. When you distribute, it's negative 6x minus 6, because that's a negative 6 times the positive 1. Then you're going to subtract 4 from both sides to get y equals negative 6x minus 10. 34, to tell whether equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, you need to rearrange them so that you can compare their slopes. So for the second part of this, I need to subtract 3x to the other side to get y equals negative 3x minus 1. So you're comparing positive 3 and negative 3. They are opposites, but they're not reciprocals. So 34 is neither. On 35, I'm not going to have a lot of room to do all the work here, but if you subtract 3x, And let's move it over to here. You get 2y equals negative 3x minus 5. Now divide by 2, and you can probably stop here because now we're comparing 2/3 and negative 3/2. Those are opposites and they're reciprocals, so this is perpendicular. And finally, for the last two questions, it looks like I'm asking you to state the error. Remember that I'm not going to give you an equation like this or a problem like this, tell you that there's an error, and then there not actually be one. So if I say there's an error, there is somewhere, you just have to find it. So if we look at 36, if I were to plug this in, I'm noticing that this 3 right here is negative, so it should have been a positive 3 in the point slope form. So y minus 5 equals 1/3 times x plus 3. That's going to change that to a positive 1, and it's going to change this plus 4 to a plus 6. So if you state the error that he should have had he should have been subtracting a negative 3 in the point slope form to give him plus 3, and then how that changes the answer. On 37, the error actually comes in the slope. Over here, negative 1 minus 5 is a negative 6, which would make this negative 2. Now if you follow my negative through, change that to a negative, that to a negative, this is going to become a positive. So instead of negative 13 here, you're going to have minus 2x. You're going to get positive 11, and here again it's positive 11, and then what's happening is let's see what is happening here. We would have added the 2x over, so it would have been a positive 2x here. We wouldn't have had to do this. We wouldn't have had to multiply by a negative 1 because the 2x would have been positive, and there aren't any fractions. I think there was supposed to be a 3 here when I was writing in the black, but this isn't right anyway. So the correct answer should have been 2x plus y equals 11. And it's really late at night, and I'm coughing a lot, so if I messed up on that last one, just let me know. I know this video is really long, but some of you are probably able to just kind of fast forward through it to see what the answers are, and then if you miss one, hopefully that's when you're taking the time to listen to the explanation. We are going to take a test tomorrow in class, so if you have any last-minute questions, you can be emailing me. I'm at the corporation office today in a meeting, so I'm able to answer my emails. You can come see me before school tomorrow morning, or we can talk real briefly before the test, but this is a long test. As you can see, it will look just like this tomorrow with this many questions on it, so you're going to have to make sure you know what you're doing and working efficiently through the test so that you don't run out of time in class.